Hello everybody and welcome back to the Shizen Hogo-Ku Zoo here on Planet Zoo in our franchise mode. Today we are going to be tackling on a big project that we don't usually do, and that involves a habitat plus a building plus a lot of foliage. So that was very broad, but I'm going to explain it a little bit here. So if you're new, welcome. This is going to be a big build where we're going to actually be making a palace along with a Bengal tiger habitat, and we're going to be building a mountain in the background. So I haven't done anything this big before, and I think this is going to be the biggest habitat in terms of scale. Not so much in square meters, but just overall, this is going to be the biggest habitat that I'll ever make for this zoo. So just a little bit of a heads up for those of you that have stuck with us for quite some time. You may recall the Bengal tiger temple that we had, where we had two habitats and we had Bengal tigers on one side of the building and one on the other side of the building, and we all know that it didn't work out. Nobody decided that they wanted to go into the building, into our learning center, so it didn't really work. And in this game, we want to make sure that we are doing things at a realistic standpoint, so we're trying to make this as realistic as possible, meanwhile also trying to make it look as beautiful as possible. So with that being said, unfortunately, people weren't getting their education last time, so we're going to give them a new habitat, and I feel like this is going to be a deserving place for it. So just a little bit of a heads up before I start talking about everything that I'm doing right here in this speed build. I do just want to mention that we are going to be skipping from certain clips to other clips, just so I can make this video a little bit quicker, because this took me probably 4 to 5 hours to do, and I'm not even done the whole entire thing, but I have the big idea down, so just bear with me. So just to start off, we do have this building right here, which is going to be our palace, and I was originally gonna make some sort of tiger temple here and just redo it and try to do it right again, but as I was building the foundation to this building, which is all that stone there, I realized I'm just basically making a palace, so I might as well just carry it on. And it ends up being fantastic. You're gonna see the end result today. But I was gonna go ahead and do a temple, and I considered using pieces from the South America DLC pack, but I decided to stay away from that and put it into the Machu Picchu Zoo, which I thought was probably gonna be a better idea, and hopefully I can use those pieces on that zoo in the future. By the way, still need to get back to that one, but I mean, like, I've been just kind of pumping things out through the Shizen Hogo-Ku Zoo lately, so we've been sticking with that for right now. Now, I did say that we do have a focal point in the zoo where we have a tower, and that was our focal point, but I feel like the palace is also giving this zoo a proper landmark. So I feel like we have two focal points in the zoo now. So the tower can be seen anywhere in the zoo, and the palace, I don't know if it really can be seen everywhere, but it is definitely one of those landmarks in our zoo. So I think that's just something that I want to kind of clarify on, is that this is probably like our, I don't really know what to say. Like I said, like that tower is like our Cinderella's castle, and like the Epcot globe and stuff like that, where you can see it from like all around the park, but at the same time, it just didn't have that ability to where people could just kind of walk around it, and it's not like one of those photo spots yet. So I just felt like that was a misrepresentation. And I feel like this palace is more like that family photo spot that you would find in a real life zoo or theme park. But stepping away from that conversation here, this palace has a lot of unique little things to it, and I'll go over each one as we go through the video. Now, we did have this little point in the tower, or sorry, we did have this little point in the building where it did bump out on the foundation there. And I used that because I was going to divide the rooms into two viewing areas on the bottom, which is still what we did, but I felt like the proper way to do that was by making some sort of insertion in the middle there, and I ended up making it a tower. I considered making it like a small little bump out balcony to where it just kind of extends a little bit, but I decided that didn't look as nice. So we end up making a tower there, and it actually works out very well. You also can note that we are having our monorail go through the building. No, I have not tested it out yet to see if it's clearing the building properly, to see if there's any clipping or anything like that, but I'll fix that at a later date if necessary. But I thought it was going to be a great addition to our monorail track because we need to make sure we do complete that loop, and I feel like this is completing the loop. And this is an awesome habitat to go through on that monorail system. Now, I did consider about making the habitat a dual habitat, so like I have one habitat and then another habitat right next to it, so we can set up some sort of breeding system. However, I discarded that idea, and it's because I started making a mountain in the background, which you'll see later, and it wasn't going to fit properly. So I just wanted to make sure I did the habitat right the first time, and I wasn't going to struggle on other things later. This is more of a habitat where it's more meant for the looks and the functionality for the animals, not so much for us to be profiting off of it. So although I did keep into consideration the profit and the donations and stuff like that. But moving on here, we do have the front of the palace here where we have a lot of space to use. You do see that I did add a rock wall off to the side there on the right hand side of the palace. Added it in all the windows, frames, decorations onto the building. So we did kind of skip through that part, but it was like very simple building techniques that I used for the building there. I feel like the biggest part about this was mainly making things flow. So toward the front here, we have the staircase, and actually we do have a little pathway like toward the bottom there at the staircase to where people can walk up, sit on a bench, and just kind of chill. They just can't go up the steps, and we block that off, and it's known, so it doesn't look out of place. But we wanted to make sure we had it flow in properly, and we ended up making this palace a garden in the front. So we end up adding flowers, some trees, and we try to make it so it looks very organized in the front, and it looks spectacular. But we had to consider a few different elements when building the garden. So we added some flowers in the front, and I actually made some little trimming for the flower planters, whatever you want to call it, and we added in some mulch. And what's going to happen is that we're going to have a lot of short grass toward the front. We have the flowers up against the barrier there. We're going to have trees going up to it, and we're also going to add ferns and some rocks. So that's what ends up happening. It works out very well, and it looks like the palace is being maintained by like maintenance, yard workers, to where they could actually mow the grass in front, and it shows in the end result. So overall, I think I did a pretty good job with the garden. It looks a little bit kind of like messy a little bit here and there, but it's not meant, to be like your front yard to where it's just grass and nothing else and maybe just some plants up against the building. This is supposed to be more of a overall garden yard. It's not supposed to be a lawn yard where it's just grass. So you'll see the final result of that as well. I think it came out great. And I did consider a few different things, and I kind of bumped back and tried to cut down on some of the ideas that I had and try to make it flow a little bit more, I should say. Now the great thing about this building as well is that we have a lot of color to the building. We have that red theme to it for the East Asia theme. There's a lot of red that goes into some of the decorations here, such as some of the benches and some of the bins already is what they have included in Planet Zoo, and the windows already come red. So we have a little bit of hint of red, and it blends in really nicely. I don't know what it is about it, but it works out. But moving on, once again, we come back over here to the habitat. I'll be jumping around a few times. Please forgive me. I have to, because otherwise I spend too much time on one thing and I can't clear my head. So we come back over here to the habitat, and this is probably my most challenging part yet, is to where I have to make things look natural, and I have to build a mountain. So basically how this is going to work out is we have a mountain. We had a cave right up against this mountain, quite obviously, but it's going to have a very rocky area, almost as if we're kind of in like a canyon, but not a canyon. So it's just kind of like one of those subtle drop-off points on the mountain, and I'll have it flow back later whenever I extend it. And as you can see here, I do attempt to actually put in a barrier toward the middle, and you can already tell that the Bengal tigers will not have enough room. And I wanted to make sure that I would meet their requirement. So therefore we scrapped that idea around this time when it came to deciding whether or not I should have 2 habitats or 1. So we scrapped the 2 habitat idea. And you can tell that we are finishing up our monorail, so I was able to get in some new little posts and connect them up to the monorail. The monorail is soon to be complete, which I'm really excited about, because it's gonna look amazing when we get this thing moving through our zoo. It's gonna bring our zoo to life like our zoo hasn't been to life before. So we have a lot of moving parts that we're adding into this zoo, which is one reason why I'm very excited about finishing this zoo, because we are getting close and everything is starting to look very nice. And obviously we'd have to consider adding in a keeper's hut, which we do. We end up having a very long keeper's hut, and we didn't really cut it down to just a 4x4 building, 4 meter by 4 meter building. We have it a 4 meter by 12 meter building. And the main reason why I do that is just so I can assure that the barrier does connect up to the building properly. I understand that I could probably kind of manipulate it a little bit, but just for simplicity's sake, it is a 3 block by 1 block building, so 4 meter by 12 meter. Now, I do want to point out that I don't finish everything in this video because there's so much that I'm doing to where it's just a little bit crazy, and I kind of went just kind of insane when it came to this project, which is good that I've been able to get down a pretty decent project. I'm really excited about it. But I wasn't able to finish up some of the smaller detail areas. I end up putting in smaller details, by the way, so don't think you're gonna miss out on any of that. But just some little areas, such as later I have that keeper's hut there, and I don't really have any curb sidings to the path or any little gardens in between, any sort of visual barrier yet. So we just haven't gotten to that point yet. And I think I forgot to mention that we did add glass inside the little windows under our building here for where our guests can walk through. We end up incorporating that into the building. So that is not building pieces when it comes to the glass part, that's actually the barrier itself. Just so it works out a little bit better in terms of functionality and how the game works. Then we move on to adding in some foliage into our habitat. As you can see, I added in some climbing enrichment, food feeders, and everything else in between. And then we just have to make sure that we have this habitat that looks a little bit more alive. So we add in plenty of trees, plenty of rocks, plenty of little different things. As you can see, we do have a little river toward the front, just so we have a little bit more of distancing between the Bengal tigers and our viewers. But to ensure that this habitat does look alive, I wanted to make sure that we added in plenty of foliage. I didn't add in a ton to where it would be hard to find where our Bengal tigers were, unless if they were in the cave, quite obviously. I wanted to make sure that we avoided that. We made sure that this habitat does feel full of a lot of wildlife, but at the same time, it's still clearly visible. And I'm gonna explain a little bit more of that later when it comes to me building up the mountain here. Now, as you can see, we are also building a waterfall, which is pretty awesome. I'm using some of the mossy rock, which I don't usually use in this game, so I wanted to change things up and make things look a little bit more interesting. So what's a better place to put it than a river? And that's where we end up putting a lot of our mossy rock, is right in the river. I gotta say, I think it looks really nice, and it makes it seem like things are more alive, but at the same time, not as neat as it usually does. So just skipping forward here a little bit, this is what the waterfall looks like so far into this point of this speed build. And it's looking really nice. I think it's working out just fantastic. This is where I really get excited because I also have not been really using a lot of dead branches and stuff like that. So we're also gonna add that into our mountainside and whatnot. And we obviously do have the waterfall, so where does a waterfall lead? Not just into a pit of nothing. It has to lead into some sort of small river, which we do have, which is being used as a visual barrier for our guests and our Bengal tigers, so they don't walk up and, you know, go after the glass type thing. I just didn't feel like it would work out properly in this circumstance. So we end up adding in a nice rock wall right up against the river as well. On one side, we don't add it so much on the other side. But it just does kind of end. So I don't know if I want to continue on the river. If so, I kind of didn't really consider it because it just kind of stops there and there's a lot of buildings in between. But let me know what you guys think. I'm actually kind of curious. Would you want to see that river extend into our main link? Please let me know in the comments down below. I want to hear from you guys. It is a Let's Play, so let me know what you think. So in terms of making this habitat look more alive when there's not so much foliage down below, what we end up doing is we add multiple trees on top of the mountain and a lot of foliage on top of the mountain as well. So the mountain behind us, or I should say behind the habitat, is really what makes up this area. There's, you know, like 4 or 5 trees down below and some shrubs and whatnot and some moss and plenty of rocks and whatnot. There's plenty of that, but we want to make sure we have this area feel a little bit more full. And by doing that, we end up adding in more of a natural type area. I don't know the best way to say that. Basically, the mountain behind us is not supposed to seem man-made. is the best way to say it. It's supposed to look like it's already been here. And that was kind of my purpose of building the mountain, is we are in a franchise mode. So therefore, obviously we're spending our money on this. However, it's not so much of us, you know, having a man-made mountain, because that would just not be realistic. So this is part of us closing in the zoo. The zoo's not going to go further behind this mountain because it's just not needed. Plus, it makes our zoo feel a little bit more restricted, to where it feels more like a realistic zoo, as if it didn't have all the plot land that it needed to be the biggest zoo on the planet. So I thought that was probably the right way to do things there. And we also close off our barrier properly, which is great. We do try to hide a little bit of the barrier that is seen back there. We do use a lot of null barrier when it comes to the mountain. So our Bengal tigers can't climb up the mountain. We make sure that we add plenty of rock. And I just kind of copy and pasted a bunch of rock and made a big rock wall, because otherwise I'm not going to lay one stone after another stone, but I'll definitely fix up the repeating areas because I think that's important. This mountain does look like it has a lot of rocks, and it just seems like there's no way to walk up this mountain. Now, when I say that, I am going to fix that issue, because we, as you can see, all of a sudden we have a monorail station right here, because yeah, we're going to have 2 stations for the monorail system, so people can go from one side of the park to the next, which I think is a reasonable thing to do in a park like this, because although it's not a long ride, I kind of want to give it a little bit more of, I don't know, more of a transportation idea behind the monorail, just not a viewing area per se. But over near that monorail station, my whole idea is that you'll be able to kind of walk up the mountain in order to get onto the monorail. So that's kind of something to look forward to in a future episode on the Shizen Gaming channel and the Shizen Hogo-Ku Zoo. We don't finish the mountain today, just want to give you guys that heads up, fair heads up. We end up adding in some more trees just so it feels a little bit more full for the time being, but I'm going to make it seem a lot messier up there and a lot more lively, as if it is in a tropical region in Asia, which is very important in this scenario. Another thing to mention is that the palace that you see toward the front, you may not see it in this shot right here, but toward the end of the video I always do some little visuals, so right after I say goodbye to you guys, we do show some visuals. And one thing that I end up doing, which I haven't done in Planet Zoo yet, is use colored lighting. And I use some colored lighting and some floodlights on the front of the building, and it looks really nice. So toward the end, look forward to that, because that is something new that we did on the zoo as well. And just to wrap things up a little bit more here, we're gonna add in some other guest facilities and make sure that this area is actually complete for people to view in. So we end up adding in an ATM on the bottom. I noticed that 15% of our complaints are from people not being able to use the one ATM that we have in the park. So therefore we're adding in another one in this area. And yeah, the line got insane at it. So just a reminder that we are in franchise mode. So therefore we had to keep an eye on these things to make sure our people are happy. So this was me addressing another complaint. Whether or not it would be a realistic place to put an ATM, maybe not so much, because everyone can see you and it's a very populated area, but we have it there anyway, just for the sake of making sure our complaints are handled. We also add in some nice lighting into the inside of our building. We use those same lanterns that we use basically everywhere else. As you can tell, I put it on the outside of the building, then I took them inside just because I wanted to make sure they were aligned properly. We also add in some nice benches, ceiling lighting as well, to make sure that everything looks good. I had some of the floodlights stick through the ceiling because of the lighting that I had above. I was trying to hide them the best I could, so I have to cover that up with, I think I just did like one of those simple square pieces, which I could just change the color of and just cover them up, which was kind of a different way of me doing things, because I don't usually do that, but maybe I'll figure something else out to cover that up. But other than that, we also add in some benches, donation bins, we add in educational facilities. It's great. The garden in front of the building looks fantastic. We have rock walls on both sides of the building that lead into our foundation to where people can walk in and view things, which I think just looks overall like really good, and it just feels like you're going into something special. There's just something about this whole entire habitat that just has that nice charm to it. It feels like you're going into something big, and that's really what the whole purpose of this whole entire project has been. You're going into something big, you're here to see a lot of wildlife and a lot of different things happening at once. So I feel like we really improved, and when I say we, I mean me, when it comes to building and putting things together. Thankfully, everything's working out so far in the Shizen Hogo-Ku Zoo, especially toward the front here at our Bengal tiger habitat. So that does mean that we will be taking out the tiger temple in the future to replace it with something else. Hopefully we can get some exhibit animals in, although I think that's boring. It is probably well needed in the zoo considering how big it is. So we'll be sure to take a look at that. But other than that, we still have some other places to fix up, so we'll finish that in another episode or off screen, either one. Please let me know what you want to see in the comments down below. If you haven't subscribed, be sure to subscribe. And be sure to like this video as well to help support out the channel. I would highly appreciate it. And please enjoy the following end scenes because everything looks beautiful in the outcome of this building. Thank you guys for watching once again, and I shall see you guys in the next video. Goodbye.